So with that, you're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen to who's going to be our next president of the United States. So please welcome Vivek Ramaswamy.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you, man. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, man. Thank you, guys. It's good to be here with you all. I think we'll do this a little bit differently today. We'll have an intimate, open conversation. We don't do that enough in this country. We have a gap between what people are willing to say in public and what they're willing to say in private. That's the best measure of our country's health. What is the percentage of people who feel free to say what they actually think in public? Right now, we're doing poorly. The only way we're going to fix it is all of us, not just me. All of us starting to speak openly again. So that's what we're doing today. Take the shackles off. What are you going to say in private? Say it in public. Let's have an open conversation. We'll do this a little differently. Some of you may have heard me speaking on the campaign trail. I'm not going to give you all a big speech today. I want to hear from you. It's my wife, Apoorva, by the way. She just joined us. Thank you. And I want to start with a topic that I know is on a lot of our minds. We're at a VFW Post today. Many of you have served this country. Probably on your minds, as it is on so many of ours, is what's happening in Israel, what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in Ukraine. As we speak right now, Congress is debating a bill to put $110 billion, I should say $110 billion more of our dollars into what I worry are going to be failed foreign wars. And I say this against the backdrop, it hurts me as an American to see our allies in Israel and what they went through. You have what Hamas did to Israel. It was inhumane. It was morally wrong. It was medieval, barbaric. And Israel absolutely has the right to defend itself. And we should support their right of national self-defense. But I am very worried, as somebody who was a high school senior when those two planes hit the Twin Towers on 9/11, to watch and remember the mistakes that we made in this country after 9/11. Fighting 25 years of wars in places like Afghanistan and Iraq that didn't actually advance the American interest. 20 years later, the Taliban still in charge in Afghanistan. 20 years later, a hostile anti-American regime in charge in Iraq that's vulnerable to Iranian influence. To what end? $6.5 trillion spent. We have a $33 trillion national debt problem today. $6.5 trillion of it was just those two wars. Thousands upon thousands of innocent American lives lost. We have to be willing to confront that, to learn from the mistakes of the past, to say we don't want to see them repeated again in the future. Now, I know my fellow Republican presidential candidates. They're not dumb people. But they're scared to say certain things in the moment where we need to speak openly the most, to speak the truth. Now is the moment for it. I am badly worried that this ground invasion in Gaza is going to be a disaster. That Israel dives south to Gaza. That leaves them vulnerable. Hezbollah could hit Israel then from the north. They've said they would do it if Israel goes to Gaza. Then Israel's in a two-front war. There's no way in which we're going to watch Israel's existence be at risk in a two-front war. That gets the United States involved. What happens when the U.S. gets involved? The Iranian-backed militias, the Houthis in Yemen, the Badr Brigade in Iraq, have said they would then hit American targets in the Middle East. Keep in mind, Baghdad is where we have our largest U.S. embassy. What happens then? We're in the middle of a large regional-scale broad war in the Middle East. We've done it before. We know how that movie goes. We don't want to do that again. All the backdrop against Israel mired in the south in Gaza, there's going to be humanitarian casualties, inevitably, that mount. International attitudes, even our allies, turning their backs on Israel. And then even if they succeed, what then? Overthrowing Hamas, you get Hamas 2.0. Got rid of Al-Qaeda, then you get ISIS. We've seen this movie before. So people will say, is this anti-Israel? That's why the other Republicans are scared, because no one wants that to say that about them. No, this isn't anti-Israel. This is pro-Israel. And more importantly, it's pro-America. We need free speech and open debate, not when it's easy, but when it's hard. We need to speak the truth, not just in easy times, but in difficult times. This is one of those moments, and so that's why I said it today. I don't know if all of you agree with me on this, but I want you to know where I stand. It's an old saying, if you care about somebody, you tell them the truth. If you care about yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. That's why I'm against this $110 billion aid package, foreign aid package that they're putting up. Not a single Republican's willing to stand up and say it. I will. It's wrong. We're $33 trillion in the hole. Our own national borders are at risk today. I've been, in the last 2 weeks, both to the northern border, which is wide open. I went to the southern border in Eagle Pass, Texas. Never seen a more organized, government-orchestrated violation of the rule of law in my life. Our homeland is as vulnerable as it's ever been. If we enter World War III, I worry this is the first time we can say this with confidence. We won't win it with Russia and China in an alliance with each other. So I cannot sell you a myth just saying, hey, print another $61 billion for Ukraine. Go ahead and print another $16 billion, even though we don't have any clear idea what Israel's plans are in Gaza. That doesn't help anybody. And we got to be willing to learn from the mistakes of the past to get this right in the present. So if you want to know, we're going to talk about this homeland and what we're doing at home, but if you want to know about my foreign policy, it's on a lot of our minds right now for good reason. I'm worried we're sleepwalking our way into World War III. Here's my foreign policy. Stay out of World War III. Declare independence from China. That's our actual enemy that we're not focused on right now because we're focused on every other problem. And then protect this homeland right here at home in the United States. Our borders, our cyber defenses, our super EMP defenses. They could take out our electric grid in a matter of days. Nuclear missile defenses that we're missing. Space-based defenses. Defense of Americans in this homeland. And I know many people find this controversial when I say it. My moral obligation, my duty as your next president, is not to somebody else somewhere else. My moral obligation is to American citizens here in the American homeland. That's my job as your next president. And I think we need somebody who can keep that head on straight and say, yes, we will stand with our allies to allow them to defend themselves, but we will not repeat the mistakes of the past, sending our sons and daughters to fight somebody else's war, repeating the same mistakes that happened after Iraq. Now, thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. Thank you. And it means a lot to me, those of you who have served, to recognize the importance of that. It's easy to sit here and send somebody else's sons and daughters. That's what they've been doing in Washington, D.C. Even worse, both the Democrats and the Republicans guilty of this. Somebody else is making money off of it. Right? When they pull the trigger, somebody else is ringing the cash register. The Biden crime family has sold off our foreign policy. So their family could get rich. It's no accident that Hunter Biden gets $5 million from the very country that we're shipping hundreds of billions of dollars to afterwards. You think that's an accident? It's not an accident. The dirty little secret is it exists in the Republican Party. I'm not saying this to pick on other candidates. I'm just saying this so we can see the truth for what it is. And you've got candidates in this race. I mean, the other day, Nikki Haley's here in Eastern Iowa saying we need a Department of Offense, not a Department of Defense. No. Same people who, in that case, you got somebody who's UN ambassador that then starts a military contracting business and sits on the board of Boeing making millions of dollars. This is a Republican problem and a Democratic problem alike. And it's going to take somebody coming in from the outside to say that we're not here to print money to finance somebody else's war, dig ourselves into a deeper national debt crisis and border crisis and national security crisis here at home. No, we're here to look after our own citizens on our own soil. So I'm going to get to talking about the domestic issues we face, but this was on the top of my mind. I know it's on the top of many of your minds. We'll pause here. Let's make this dispense with the speech. I mean, if you have other questions on your mind about the foreign policy, about what's going on in Israel and Ukraine, let's open this up. I want to hear from you, and then we'll move on and bring it back home to our domestic policy. So don't be shy if you have a question. Just while I'm going, just raise your hand, and we'll get right to you and make this more of a conversation than a speech setting. You got one in the back there?
Yeah. How do you keep it from escalating into a major war? What would you do as president?
Yeah, so I'll go to give both Ukraine and Israel both. It's where the funding debate is right now. So I do a deal that reasonably secures Ukraine's sovereignty while making sure that we don't escalate this war against Russia. Right now, we're marching straight head on to nuclear war with Russia. That's where we are right now. We have no nuclear arms proliferation treaty. Since 1972, this is the first time that we've never had one with Russia. They just pulled out. So here's the deal I would do. All right, you got to recognize going into this deal, though, before I tell you what the deal is, I got to share some facts with you so you understand where I'm coming from. Facts. Just because Putin is bad does not mean Ukraine is good. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties. This is a country that has consolidated all of the state media, all the media, into one state TV media arm. This is a country that was praising a Nazi in its own ranks. It's Volodymyr Zelensky was doing it in front of the Canadian Parliament just 2 weeks ago. It's a country that has serious neo-Nazis in its own ranks in eastern Ukraine today. It's a country that has threatened the U.S. that it won't hold its elections this year unless the U.S. forks over more money. That's not some model of democracy that the media tells you to believe they are. Also, some hard facts. The regions of eastern Russia that are occupied, Luhansk, Donetsk, and eastern Donbass region of Russia, of Ukraine, they're Russian-speaking regions. The people who live there don't even view themselves as part of Ukraine. They haven't been represented in the Ukrainian parliament for nearly 10 years. So we have to do a deal against the backdrop of those factual realities, not the made-up fairy tales that the media and the politicians in D.C. try to spin up for us. So against that backdrop, here's the deal I would do. Freeze the current lines of control. We did it in the Korean War, do it here. Freeze the current lines of control. Make a hard commitment that NATO will not admit Ukraine to NATO. People forget this. That's what Putin asked for before invading. We couldn't give it to him. Why did he ask for it? Well, listen. In 1990, we made a commitment. James Baker, Secretary of State, made a commitment to Gorbachev, who ran the USSR, that NATO would expand not 1 inch, that was the exact words he used, not 1 inch past East Germany. We didn't keep that commitment. Well, we said we couldn't, you said we couldn't make that commitment that Ukraine won't admit NATO. NATO won't admit Ukraine, then they invade Ukraine. So I give that commitment. But in return, we get something more. Russia has to exit its military alliance with China. The Russia-China military alliance, that's the biggest threat we face. We could beat Russia one-on-one. We could probably beat China one-on-one. We could not beat them together. Russia has more nuclear capabilities, more hypersonic missile capabilities. China has naval capacities ahead of ours, and we depend on their economy for our modern way of life. That's a problem. So I would require, in return for this real deal, Putin has to pull out of his alliance with China. He'll do it. There's kinks in that armor. I could talk about that if you're interested. Now is our moment to do it. And then that deters Xi Jinping from going after Taiwan. Because right now his bet is that if Russia and China are together, the U.S. won't want to go to war with those allied nuclear superpowers at the same time. But if Russia's no longer in China's camp, then Xi Jinping has to think twice. So we address that set of issues over there in Israel. Here's my point. The ground invasion of Gaza looks like it's a disaster in the making. They're barreling forward anyway. What does a good friend do? Stop. Somebody's really angry, enraged, getting into that car. Don't give them the keys. A good friend says, hey, let's use your head a little bit. Before you go crash in that, it's going to hurt yourself and hurt the people around you. Might even, in this case, hurt a national self-existence and pull the U.S. into a prolonged war we don't want to be in. So here's what I would say. Have a focused mission that allows you to actually hold accountable the people who wronged Israel while defending your own existence as a country. Get the top 100 people in Hamas. Get their heads on stakes if you have to, literally or metaphorically. Put them on the southern border with Gaza. Say this is never going to happen again. That's achievable. Say that, you know what, the money we save from fighting that war, put it back into border defenses. That's what I would tell Israel to do. They had a major defense failure of their border, but I'm the president of the United States, or at least that's what I'm running for. I learned that lesson right here. If that can happen in Israel, it can happen here. The money we would save from some war that we're dragged into, chain-ganged into, we would then say, no, instead of using our military to defend somebody else's border, we will use our own military to defend our own southern border and our own northern border too. That is how we secure this homeland. We will save money doing it, we will save lives doing it, and we will protect this homeland doing it. That's the way I would deal with this crisis if I were there now. And it hurts me that we don't have somebody there who's rationally, realistically thinking. This is solvable. This is addressable. It's a difficult moment, but it's addressable. But it doesn't come from just beating the drums of war with a bunch of people do it in both parties who stand to make money from doing it, that are corrupt, captured by the super PACs. The reason you don't hear this from other presidential candidates, I'll tell you why. It's the super PACs. They tell you you can only give $3,300 to a campaign. That's a lie. The people who are actually funding the mailers in your mailboxes, including the trash they print about me in your mailbox, it's not paid for by their campaigns. It's paid for by the super PACs. Same thing, the TV ads you see, they're flooding the TV. Super PACs, people giving millions and millions, sometimes tens of millions of dollars to candidates to turn them into their little pet puppets. It's a law of nature. Every politician dances to the tune of their biggest donor. In my case, that biggest donor is me. I refuse to be somebody else's circus monkey. So my view is, yes, I'm going to speak the truth when it's hard. That's a hard truth right now. And I know it's fashionable today to go back and say, oh, the Iraq War was a big mistake. And I think it was. And I said so at the time. But today it's a fashionable thing to say. How do we actually get there? You think it was obvious to everyone it was a bad idea? Then no, it was moments like this. Shut up, sit down, follow the plan, do as you're told. That's what's going on in the debate, mostly relating to Ukraine and Israel right now. That's what's going on with the $110 billion package. That's why I'm the only Republican, let alone only candidate, that has had the guts to say we got to vote no on this package. When we're $33 trillion bankrupt in this country and have problems of our own, we don't need to go create new ones. So yes, that's the way I would lead. Very specific plans. And I do think it's going to take someone coming from the outside who didn't grow up in that same system. Someone who's been a CEO. Someone, I actually think from a different generation. From the next generation. To do right by the next generation of Americans too. So thank you for that question. I appreciate it. Okay, go for it. Go for it.
What do you tell Ukrainians?
So what I tell Ukrainians is, it's a good question. So the deal I do allows Ukraine to come out with its sovereignty intact. Actually, the parts of Ukraine where the actually people who speak Ukrainian, right, or people who have Ukrainian ties, as opposed to Russian-speaking regions, they come out with their sovereignty intact, which is likely better than the track they're on. On the other side of this really prolonged war, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be some post-Zelensky warlord taking up some fractured up country that Russia has most of. It's going to be Afghanistan 2.0. And so this is a reasonable path to peace that, yes, comes out with Ukrainian sovereignty intact, backstopped by U.S. interests because it's backstopped against Russia exiting its military alliance with China. Even they are better off. That's what I would tell them because it's the truth. It's not what makes you feel good. Wear the cargo pants if you're a comedian and be a little national hero. Talking about the man named Zelensky, I don't think he's doing right by his own people. In fact, Zelensky himself was one who wanted peace early in the war until Boris Johnson from the UK flew over there in April 2022 to convince him out of it. Why did Boris Johnson do it? Because he had his own problems in his own backyard that he wanted to deflect from. So it's internationally. It's the international swamp. Everybody's looking after their own interests, sacrificing somebody else's lives in the process. Gave Zelensky a bunch of money. He gets a little rake on it. We know he does. Britain knows he does. We don't care. We look the other way. Because it's a deflection tool for the failures that we have in this country. So that's the way the game is played. And I want to speak the truth. That's even better for Americans. Of course, that's my job. But I actually think it's even better for the Ukrainian people. That's where I come out. Thank you for that question. Any other ones on foreign policy before we move on? Thank you. No, you come back.
I just wondered what you'd do with our southern border. How would you close that?
Well, that is a part of foreign policy, so I appreciate that. It's probably the most important part of it. So it's not a technical challenge, right? I mean, I was there a week and a half ago. The country that put a man on the moon. We can do this, right? He agrees with me. I like that. It's like, we can. I like that. It's good. But it takes a question of political will. So how do we do it very specifically? I'm a businessman. I'm a CEO. Solve problems as a CEO would. There's a cost to coming here. There's a probability of success if you're an illegal migrant. And then there's the upside of coming here. People are people. That's how they look at it. We have to bring up the cost. No more aid to Central America. Not a dollar until they're putting that towards blockading the passage through the jungles in Central America and otherwise. They used to do that. They're not doing it now. We'll pull the foreign aid until they do it again. That's one. Number two is reduce the probability of crossing. Aquatic barriers. They work really well. They're cheap. They're mobile. You can move them. The reason the U.S. government doesn't use them isn't because they don't work. It's because they do work. More aquatic barriers. Move our military. Secure our own southern border. Just send the signal. It's funny. I was in the Rio Grande. Here's the side I'm on, U.S. side. Looking at the Mexican side. They got the Mexican National Guard truck over there, and then they've got the Mexican state local police over there. The cars are there. Literally in front of them. I could just see people walking into the Rio Grande, walking across. They're not doing a thing to stop them. So I'm wondering, what the heck are they doing there? Then I look behind me, and there's a bunch of press taking and filming me there. They're there for the cameras. They want you to think they're doing something about it. I could see just looking, they're not doing a darn thing about it. So we have to seal our own border. That's the probability of success. And then reduce the upside of coming here illegally. Not a dime of taxpayer funding to sanctuary cities. We're done with it. And by the way, thank you. It's our money that we are using to fund the breakage of law. Think about that. And then I'm going further than everybody else on this one just because it's the right answer. End birthright citizenship for the kids of illegal migrants. It was never supposed to apply to them, and it does not apply to them today. So that's how, March 2025. I take office January 20th, 2025. By March of 2025, this problem is solved. It's not a technical challenge. It's a question of will. It's going to take somebody from the outside to do it, somebody who's not captured by that game. That's why I'm in this. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. We'll go come up here, and then we'll go to the back.
Well, I just want to me, it appears Americans are making the money off the illegal aliens and stuff like that. That, you know, we're our own worst enemy, and it's above our heads. You know, I work and pay my taxes, and that's about it. But they're being allowed to come here, work in the factories, and nobody's batting an eye over that. You know, so what are we going to do about that? I think the problem's here at home. It's not at the border.
I mean, it's everywhere, right? It's you got the cost of coming over here, the probability of crossing. Then you got the incentives. You got to end the incentives of being here. So my answer is this: if you're in this country illegally, there's one simple answer to this question: you will be returned to your country of origin. No implicit or explicit amnesty. We're done with it. And I think once we understand that, then people understand, okay, well, after all that trouble and all that cost, I don't even know if I'm going to make it, they're still going to send me back? Forget about it. They're not going to do it anymore. But you're right. Part of the problem is we're looking the other way, is a lot of people, including in both parties, comes down to money. It's most of it. Why do you think we're dependent on China for our modern way of life?
Money.
Comes down to money. By the way, if you're a U.S. business expanding into China and you criticize the CCP, they'll say shut the door on your way out. You criticize the United States about systemic racism or climate change, they will roll out the red carpet. Apply an emissions cap to Chevron or Exxon, but not to PetroChina, that's BlackRock, great, China will roll out the red carpet. So it all comes back down to money. Why do the politicians in both parties quietly go along with this nonsense, including the Republican Party? Comes down to money. It's the mother's milk of politics.
You're going to have a hell of a fight in Washington. You're
we will.
The one talking this way.
Well, it takes an outsider. I mean, I'm not a politician. I really am not. I mean, I'll be 48 years old when I leave the White House. I look forward to my life afterwards. Our little sons are in that bus, taking a nap right now, okay? If they graduate from high school before we get this right, we don't have a country left. I really do believe that. We're not working with that much time here, so that's what gives me my sense of urgency to do this. Public service should go back to being about service again. Not a way for politicians to get in there and make money. That's why I say, you know what, they don't like it when I say this. I don't think anybody who served in government should be able to lobby that government for 10 years after they leave. That's not controversial. It's bipartisan. Why? There's so much other honest work you could find. Why does that have to be the one job that you do? I'd be happy if you go make money, start a business, create things for people, make yourself as wealthy as you want, but don't use your government connections to do it. You shouldn't be able to be a military contractor using your connections from the UN if you were the U.S. ambassador to the UN, let alone believe that qualifies you to run for president. It is corrupt. You shouldn't be able to trade individual stocks. As a congressman, look at the people buying up stocks of Raytheon or whatever in recent weeks, right before the turbulence picks up. This is corrupt. You shouldn't be able to join the board of a company that you regulated right after you leave. The commissioner of the FDA joins board the Pfizer. You got governors of South Carolina, Nikki Haley in this race, gets special favors for Boeing to come to South Carolina, joins the board of Boeing right after she's out of government. Republican or Democrat, I don't care. This is corrupt. We need to put an end to the corruption. And you know what? They're going to come for us. I don't care. You're guided by your purpose. Nothing's going to stop you. We'll go in there for 8 years. We'll leave. January 2033 is the destination. It's not that far from now. I'm confident by the time we leave, and the real problem here is the permanent state. It's not even the people in Congress. It's the administrative state. The people who we elect to run the government, they're not the ones who actually run the government anymore. It's the people in the three-letter agencies in the permanent state that wield these elected officials like puppets, and then they're the ones who actually benefit the most in a relationship with the private sector. So that's what's going to end on my watch. It's going to take an outsider to do it. Frankly, a guy like me isn't supposed to be doing this. The system isn't made for an outsider from a different generation who comes from the outside to win this thing. The only chance we have, and I'm confident it's a very good chance because of you guys, is Iowa. Right, if I win Iowa, I'm your next president. We get it, we get this done. And I'm not going to promise you the things we can't do. I would love to have a 12% flat tax across the board, simplify, get rid of all the crony capitalism in there. But that requires Congress, and I can't promise you something that requires Congress. But shutting down the shadow government in the executive branch as commander-in-chief, using our military to seal our own southern border, to end the incentives for being here, enforcing the laws accordingly as it relates to deportation and birthright citizenship, to actually say as the United States that we're going to reinforce the rule of law again in this country, that much I can get done as your next president. Right? So for me, November 2024, it's not the destination. That's just a point along the way. The destination is January 2033. When we leave that White House after 2 terms, what do we want to tell you that we did? Shut down the deep state at home, declared independence from China abroad. Our economy will be growing again if we do those 2 things. Keep us out of World War III in the process, and you know what? Revive some national pride in our 2 sons and their generation. That much I know I can do. The only thing standing in between us getting there is this election and the super PACs that are trying to distort the process. The fix to that is in your hands. Iowa goes first for a reason. So we're here in roomfuls of like this. You don't see that many ads from me. You don't see us playing that super PAC puppet game. Our bet is that we can do this bottom up. And that rests in your hands, not mine. So that's why we're here. And we're counting on you. We're not going to be shy about asking for your help. I appreciate that. Thank you. Go to the back.
I just appreciate you being here. I just wonder, how can we fight China or call the CCP our enemy when everything we buy says made in China?
Including our American flags even.
Right.
Most American flags in this country are manufactured in China. Our semiconductors, those are little chips that power these little phones in our pockets, our laptops, probably the lights in this room, that refrigerator, powered by semiconductors. Little chips coming from Taiwan, a tiny island nation off the southeast coast of China that they're looking to invade, almost certainly they're looking to in the coming years. Think about our pharmaceuticals. The pills we put in our mouth, even the Advils, the ibuprofens, the over-the-counter prescriptions. The over-the-counters, not even the prescriptions. 95% of them sourced from China. The worst one of all, our own military equipment. The F-35 jets on down that we make in this country require parts coming from China. Think about this with me, people. Does this make sense? Why are we stockpiling military equipment if it's not to fight an enemy on the other side of the world? Doesn't make sense. You think you're going to say, hey, we'll keep sending you those parts to go bomb us? No, it's not going to work that way. The same country that made a man-made virus in a lab, and yes, I'm going to say that unleashed it on the world to release hell on the world for the COVID-19 pandemic. The same country that is intentionally, yes, I'm going to say it, lacing pharmaceuticals, illegally coming across the southern border with fentanyl. What do you think that country is going to do with our legal pharmaceutical supply chain? Think with me. We cannot depend on our enemy for our modern way of life. We did not depend on the USSR for the shoes on our feet or the phones in our pockets or our American flags, God forbid. So I will declare independence from China. This is more achievable. Now, we'll onshore as much as we can to the United States. That's a good way to do it. Declare independence from the climate cult that shackles the U.S. while leaving China untouched. That's one of the great competitive advantages that stops us from competing with China is this climate ideology. The climate change agenda is absolutely a hoax. As somebody who has been trained as a scientist, I understand this. It is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. It has to do with letting China beat the United States. And then also we got to open up with at least making sure that in the meantime, whatever we can't bring here, let's talk to Japan, South Korea, India, Australia to fill those gaps. That's how serious I am about declaring independence from China. So 2 things you take away: shut down the deep state at home, declare independence from China abroad, keep us out of World War III in the process, and we have a country again. That's how it looks, and that's how we're going to do it. Thank you for that question, man. We'll come right here. Oh, so we're just getting warmed up. Okay. All right. I'm having too much fun with you guys. What's your name?
My name's Michael.
Michael.
How do you plan on dealing with entities that have anti-American interests like Soros, the World Economic Forum, or BlackRock? Things that are right now breaking down our social structure in our country.
Stop them from capturing our government. Let me start with the last of them, BlackRock. So not all solutions come from government. As my friend Matt was telling you at the start, last business that I started was a competitor to BlackRock. It's a company called Strive in Central Ohio. What's BlackRock doing? They're using our money, retirement money, investment accounts, to vote for policies in corporate America's boardrooms that most of us hate. Climate policies, racial equity policies. It has nothing to do with business. Why are all the businesses doing it? Because BlackRock requires it. Why does BlackRock require it? Because California's and New York's pension funds, government, say they won't invest with them unless they behave that way. And China's doing the same thing to BlackRock too. I launched an asset manager, Strive. Within the first year of launching our first fund, we crossed $1 billion in assets under management. JP Morgan took 2 years to get to the same place. So I believe in taking on bureaucracies through the front door, winning. I'm probably the only prominent American in the U.S. who has sued the World Economic Forum and got everything we wanted out of a result of it. These people are snakes in terms of what they're willing to do and say about you. That is, it's how they capture people. So a lot of this has to come down to, Soros, that's a super PAC problem. That's a Democrat version of it. Buys and pays politicians on the other side through the mega influence of mega money. The left used to say, keep money out of politics. After Soros came along, they say, I forget we ever said that. We'll take the money. So it's about getting to the root cause of the nexus between big business and big government. The real threat to liberty we face, this is the World Economic Forum threat, this is the BlackRock threat. The real threat, this is a super PAC threat. The real threat to our liberty today is not just big government. It is a hybrid of big government and big business that together do what neither one could do alone. That's big tech for you. Government say, oh, we're not censoring the content. We're just telling tech companies to censor through the back door what they couldn't censor through the front door. Can't get the Green New Deal through Congress? No problem. Get our little pets at BlackRock to force it through corporate America using our money in the back door instead. That's the real threat to our time. It's not 1980 anymore. It's like Dorothy might have said to Toto, Wizard of Oz. We're not in 1980 anymore. We need new solutions, and I think it's going to take a new generation of leaders to actually lead us there. That's why I'm in this race. I'll talk a little bit more about why I think it's going to take a new generation. We have time for one more question. See if anybody else has one. Other, we'll come back to you, sir.
Hey, I came from Potomac. I want to ask you, this is the only chance I've ever get to ask you.
Thank you.
I'm a very proud supporter of medical cannabis. I'm a veteran. I believe in it wholeheartedly. I'm proof that it works. Why is it still a Schedule I drug? I know Big Pharma is the only reason it's doing it.
Yeah.
What are your views on the medical cannabis?
So I have some very specific views for veterans. I actually support not just medical cannabis for veterans, but also for veterans who suffer from PTSD. I think we have to open that up, option set up more. Psilocybin, I think that you should look at certain options that otherwise have been unnecessarily scheduled, that for veterans suffering from medical conditions, including PTSD, talk about ketamine, talk about psilocybin, these are reasonable, ayahuasca, these are reasonable options that I will deschedule as president for veterans suffering from PTSD. 40 plus veterans a day. They say 22 to 23. On my research, it's closer to 40 veterans per day committing suicide in this country. That is unacceptable. And so, no, I'm not going to let some big pharma lobbying apparatus stand in the way of us at least allowing our own veterans to have the maximal choice available to them instead of turning to fentanyl or worse to suicide. Fentanyl's part of the road to suicide, if not the final act itself. That ends on my watch. The VA reform is also just fundamental in this country. Bring meritocracy to the VA. And I've got this, they say don't share your ideas before they're fully baked. Well, I'll be honest with you, we're working on this one. But it's the direction I want to go. I want the VA to be literally owned by veterans. I think it should be private. It'll operate much more efficiently. And who are the shareholders? It should be the veterans themselves. So that's well run. That can then actually make money by being a better run hospital system. There can be profits on it, the shareholders of whom are our veterans. Nobody else in this country is talking about how we stand our veterans on their own feet to have their chance at the American dream after serving this country. It's going to take somebody coming from the outside to do it, from that different generation. So we're going to be rolling that out in the coming months. But this is how we're going to run this country. These aren't Republican ideas or Democrat ideas. They really aren't. I mean, anti-corruption in Washington, D.C. exists in both parties. Fixing it shouldn't be a one-party issue. Standing for our veterans. That's not a blue versus red point. It's not black people versus white people. That's not the divide in this country. The divide in this country, there's a war in this country between those of us who love the United States of America, who believe in our founding ideals, who believe that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those of us who believe that you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character. Those of us who believe in free speech, open debate, who believe in American exceptionalism, that this is the greatest country known to man, that even though we're an imperfect country, we are founded on the pursuit of a more perfect union, the pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice for all. That is most of us in this country on one side of this war. And then on the other side, we have this fringe minority today that says your identity is based on your race, your gender, your sexuality, that if you're black, you're disadvantaged, that if you're white, you're privileged, that you can't express your ideas freely, that we have to abandon carbon emissions here in the United States even as we ship them to places like China, that if you disagree with any of these ideas, you're automatically racist or homophobic or transphobic or xenophobic or a climate denier at a time where there's no greater damnation in modern America than to be called one of these things. So when given the choice between pledging allegiance to this new religion and being tarred with the scarlet letter, everyday Americans are bending the knee for fear of losing their jobs, fear of their kids getting bad grades in school, fear of becoming an outcast in your own community. That culture of fear then replaces our culture of free speech. That's where we are today. That is the other side of this war. And I call it a war because there's no middle ground between these views. Either you believe in meritocracy or you believe in group quotas. Either you believe in free speech or you believe in censorship. Either you believe in American exceptionalism or you believe in American apologism. You can't have both. It doesn't work that way. This is our moment for choosing. The reason the other side is winning is that the managerial class, the swamp in D.C., is propping it up, and the CCP is using this anti-Americanism to laugh at us at every step of the way. I'll tell China you won't buy land in this country. You won't donate to universities in this country. We'll hold you accountable for unleashing hell on the world with the COVID-19 pandemic. This is what it's going to take. And I think that here's the good news is even 80% of us are on one side of this war. Half the 20% are people younger than me who never learned those ideals in the first place. We're going to bring them along too. And I'll close on this. I think the missing ingredient to us winning this war, you want to know what it is? It's reviving national pride in this nation. 60% of young people, I'm not making this up, say they would sooner give up their right to vote than to give up their access to TikTok. I'm not making that up. I think every high school senior who graduates from 12th grade should have to pass the same civics test that every immigrant has to pass in order to become a voting citizen of this country. You got to have skin in the game to play in this game. You got to know something about a country. Think about what's going on in our generation. We're lost. We're hungry for a cause. We're starved for purpose and meaning and identity at a time in our history when faith, patriotism, hard work, family. These things have disappeared. That leaves a black hole in our hearts. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, that is when the poison fills the void. Pick your favorite one. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, depression, anxiety, fentanyl, suicide. It's not an accident that we see these poisons at the same time. So how do we fix it? We can't just complain about it. We have to fill that void with our vision of what it means to be an American. The ideals of the American Revolution. The idea that we, the people, create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. The idea that we, the people, settle our differences in a constitutional republic where every citizen's voice and vote counts equally. Not in the back of palace halls in old world England, not in the back of some super PAC meeting in the modern electoral system. That's how we do things in America. And the problem with my generation, here's what happened. We got so obsessed with celebrating our diversity and our differences that we forgot all of the ways we're really just the same as Americans, bound by that common set of ideals that set this country into motion. And I'll close this the way we started. You know how we're going to get that back? All of us, not just me, all of us, just like we did today, all of us starting to speak openly again. Say in public what you will say in private. That is what this campaign is about. Speak the truth, not just when it is easy, but when it is hard. Speak the truth with a spine, with conviction, without apology, with respect. But part of respect is that you respect thy neighbor enough to tell him what you actually think. That is what we're doing today. That is what we're doing in this entire campaign. That's what we're going to do for this country, is to revive the truth. God is real. There are two genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution, it is the strongest and greatest guarantor in human history. That is the truth. We fight for the truth. We stand up for the truth. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War, won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, not China, is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. That is what, with your help, we will revive to save this great nation. I am asking you for your help. This is possible. I'm only possible because of you. All right, get this done. It's not that far away. We don't have that much time. We're not working with a lot of time here. But this is our moment to take that America First agenda, but now take that to the next level with me as the next generation. It's hard to reach the next generation. That is my job. That is my responsibility. That is our duty and responsibility. You leave that work to us. January 15th, that is the caucus. We're not asking for donations. We're asking for actually the most important donation of all, though, a little bit of your time. You know 20 people. I know you all do. Some of you know more, but all of you know 20 people. Bring them to the caucus. Maybe not all 20 of them are traditional Republicans. The Republican Party makes me sick too. Tell them that's okay. Do you care about the pro-American movement? Bring them out too. January 15th. It's this simple. If I win this Iowa caucus, and I think we can, that's in your hands, I am your next president. And if I'm your next president, more importantly, we shut down that shadow government, we declare independence from China, we revive pride in our kids, we keep us out of World War III. It's not that complicated. We need you to do it, though. So we're asking you to do your part. And I promise you, Apurva, you want to come here? Welcome my wife here. She did. She's a hero on this campaign trail. She doesn't brag. I'm going to brag on her a little bit. She does 12 cases. She's a throat surgeon, saves people's lives. Come here, campaign with me in the weekend in Iowa. Go back to those surgeries. We're each making our impact in the way we know how to in this country. But if you all do your part, all right, everybody in communities like these, the places, that they're going to say it's not the traditional places you go if you want to win the state. I look at it the other way. The people of this country, starting with the people of this state, you all go first for a reason. You all do your part here. You bring the other people in this community out. On January 15th, you do your part. I promise you, we will do ours, and our country's best days will yet still be ahead of us. Thank you all. God bless you. God bless our country. God bless our United States of America. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.